what are we seeing on the screen? Shadi mein zarur aana. Is that an invitation? And by the way, is it a South Indian wedding or a North Indian wedding? Well, of course, you'll see more. See, in sociology paper 2, we have questions coming on kinship, marriage, and so on and so forth. My name is Rajkumar Mone. Today we are going to look at one particular topic from sociology paper 2, which is going to be kinship, and we will have a look at a question based analysis. So there was a question, in fact, in the last 10 years or so, there have been at least three or four instances when a question has been asked on South Indian and North Indian kinship system. So you have to really delimit. You have to talk about the similarities and the differences. More often the differences between these two systems. So let's start with a familiar story. Well, Geeta and Ranvijay Singh ring a bell. Well, some fictitious names got inspired from this movie Animal. Of course, she was not a Nair there. Nairs are from Kerala, that's right. But for the sake of similarity and for some fun here, I have taken these two names. So in case a girl from Kerala, a Nair girl from Kerala, and a boy from, let's say, Punjab or North India, anywhere from North India, decide to get into a marriage relationship. In case they decide to get married, what really happens to the marriage? Of course, everything will be fine. Of course, there'll be a little bit of trouble in understanding each other's culture, because there are cultural differences. They will not be able to understand where exactly a couple goes, a couple lives after getting married. Because in case of North Indian families, it's with boys, but in case of Nairs, as it used to happen earlier, the boy or the husband used to go and reside with the girl's family. Sometimes visiting husband, not really residing there permanently, but mostly visiting. Gender roles also have so these two systems have different gender roles. In case of a matrilineal Nair family, it's the mother matron who really runs the show with the help of either her son or brother. But in case of North Indian family, typically it is usually the lineal, patrilocal society where the father figure, the eldest brother, Tau, eldest uncle, who is the one who runs the show. Family structure also has some differences. In case of kinship terms, that's the most interesting part, and we'll see how. And of course, one needs to gain that cross-cultural understanding in order to gain an understanding of one another, the cultures of these two, the kinship systems of these two areas. I'm sorry, I got a little disturbed. Okay, so what really is kinship? Kinship is that social relationship that provides structure in family life and society. Kinship is that bond between different relatives. How relatives get related, how how different groups choose their partners, that defines the kinship. Who resides with whom, who moves out after marriage, who moves in after marriage, all of these also define kinship. We'll see one by one how the kinds of lineages and descent, etc. But we'll only be touching all these concepts very briefly, and focus mostly on kinship system in India, and north and south. Kinship system really determines the roles that one has to play, how inheritance works, how people interact within communities, with in-laws and so on and so forth. And intertwined with kinship system is also those rules of marriage. They affect each other. There are three primary lineal systems. Of course, you can go on exploring more. There are combinations also, but for today's class I've only kept it at bare minimal, which is patrilineal, matrilineal and bilateral. In case of patrilineal, this is it defines inheritance through father's line. Lineage is traced through father's line. In case of matrilineal, it's through mother's line. In case of bilateral, it could be equally traced from both the sides, or some factors from father's, some factors for some purposes from mother's side. Now in India, there are different regions, and a sociologist, Iravati Karve, who happened to be the head of the department of Pune University, head of department of sociology, head of sociology department Pune University, who established the department of sociology in Pune University, happened to conduct a study in India, and she was in fact the very first woman anthropologist and sociologist in India, Indian woman. And she has really conducted very important studies, and she mapped kinship systems based on linguistic zones, and she came up with four north, south and Mundari kinship zones. For today's purpose, we are going to focus on only north and south. So in North India, predominantly we find patrilineal families. Lineage is traced through father. Lineage and inheritance passes through mother's side in case of South India, but that's only an exception in case of matrilineal systems only. There is an existence of patrilineal communities also, and in fact matrilineal systems are an exception. They are not found in abundance in South India, and now the trend is also gradually disappearing. More and more you will find patrilineal families, patriarchal families only. Of course, there is a trend towards modernization and all that, but for today's purpose, we are trying to distinguish between North Indian and South Indian system. Hence, we are going to talk about matrilineal more often than not, but do not assume that every community in South India follows only patrilineal. No, it's Nair, Bunt, and these two communities primarily, Nairs in Kerala, Bunts in Karnataka, and certain Mopila Muslims in Kerala again. Apart from that, there could be some or other small tribes and all, insignificant that way, from a larger macro perspective. Now, in patrilineal communities, lineage follows father's side, but here in matrilineal communities, it's uncles, mamas who are more important. Right, they become more important part of the family. Let us look at a table that really distinguishes between these two. This is specifically about kinship terminology. Now, in North India, we have simplified kinship terms that focus on the exact relationship. You know who's from whose side, whether an individual is from mother's side or from father's side. For example, chacha, chachi, taya, tai, all of them will be from father's side. Mama, mami, mosa, mosi will be from the mother's side, right? In case of South Indian kinship system, such classification from mother's or father's side is absent. What they instead do is they have a very complex kinship term where paternal, maternal are clubbed together, and there is also an element of importance given to generation to which that individual belongs to, with reference to the ego, and the age of the individual with reference to the ego. These are again additional factors that come into play. In case of North India, the kinship term is descriptive. The moment you say Phupa, you know who is Phupa? Phupa is father's sister's husband. But in case of a South Indian kinship system, it is classificatory. That means it divides the entire kinship group into two groups. One, from where you can get a bride or you can enter into an alliance. That means they are potential group from where you can potentially acquire a mate. and there's another group from where you do not get any mate. So that is a group from which you cannot marry anybody. So the group from whom you can marry, or you already married, an individual from that group, and there's another group from where you cannot marry. So that's the usual classification. At the same time, even among cousins, there is a distinction. For example, there could be two sisters. If a sister, if the younger one is younger to you as well, she could probably be a part of that potential mate, but the elder one will never be a part of that potential mate if that elder girl happens to be elder to you as well. Fine. So that is the age distinction, that is the age factor that comes into play in case of South Indian kinship system. So in case of North India, there are kinship terms that straight away go pinpoint exact relationship. But in case of South India, they only give you a kind of, they put people into classes. For example, father's brother who is elder to your father, or mother's sister's husband who again happens to be elder to your father, will be called as Periyappa. Now remember, these are the terms that are used in Tamil, in Malayalam, which is in Kerala, in Telugu, which is Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, and in Karnataka, in Kannada, there can be different terms. There are different terms, in fact, but more or less references are usually made to words in Tamil, because that is the place where most of the early studies were conducted. Now, Periyappa is similar to Tau, but Periyappa can also be Mausa, who is elder to your father. Getting it? Age-wise, he is elder to your father. At the same time, in case of Chittappa, Chittappa can be your Chacha, but at the same time, Chittappa can also be your Mausa, who is younger to your father. Fine. So there are this kind of relations. This is how age-wise distinctions are made. Mother's brother and father's sister's husband. So mother's brother is Mama and father's sister's husband is Phupa. Both of them are called by the same kinship term, which is Maman. And the funny part is, even father-in-law is also addressed by the same kinship term, because one's Mama and one's Phupa can be potential bride givers. Hence, they can be potential father-in-laws or fathers-in-law. Hence, these three relationships are addressed by the same term, which is Maman, right? At the same time, even that holds true for the female counterpart as well. So this is how South Indian kinship terms, this is how they exist, this is how they work. The reason is, in North India, let's very quickly move to the reason here. In North India, there are the prominent rule is Gotra exogamy, village exogamy, which means you need to marry outside your Gotra, outside your village, and one needs to have patrilineal residence, and lineage, of course, follows through patrilineal rules. But in case of South India, so in North India, it gives you prohibitory orders. Don't marry within this group. Don't marry within this group. Gotra, don't marry within this group. Village, marry outside. But here, in case of South India, it provides you a preferential rule. It says, okay, go marry within this group only, which is among your cross cousins. Cross cousin marriage, simply put, is marriage between the children of a brother and a sister. Fine. So to translate it in Hindi or in North Indian language, in terms, marrying one's mama's daughter or one's bua's daughter or son, or mama's daughter or son, that is what cross cousin marriage really means. That means one cannot marry one's father's brother's children. Father's sister's children is okay, which becomes cross cousin. That means one's parents' opposite sex siblings' children, or mother's brother's children, but never mother's sister's children. Mother's sister's children and father's brother's children become parallel cousins. So they are like brothers and sisters, right? You cannot marry from among that group, but you can marry from among the group that is formed by cross cousins. All right. So that's the funny thing there. But at the same time, the age with respect to the ego also should be always respected. In case the girl is elder, then she becomes a didi, a sister in a way. One cannot marry her. But in case the girl is younger to the ego, in case the ego is male, ego is the point of reference, then of course she becomes a part of that marriageable group, right? And vice versa. Matrilocal and patrilocal, of course, there are residences that are patrilocal and matrilocal, but among matrilineal societies, for example, the Bunts and Nayars, the residences are matrilineal. That means after marriage, the couple goes and resides with the mother's family. It's all mothers, matrons, sisters, everybody living together with the brothers who sometimes are visiting their wives in some other household. That's it. Okay? It's just the mirror replica of what happens in case of North Indian marriages, or generally the marriages that we see, but with some twists and a little bit of exceptions there, whatever I've mentioned right now, right? And then of course lineage and community, it becomes a little rigid here. See, in case of um, North India, it's the chacha, tau, and all the brothers from your father's side. There is more unity among that particular kin group. But in South India, the unity, more unity or more closer are those with whom you have those alliances over and over through different generations. So one could have, gained a bride in this generation from a particular group, particular family. In the next generation, a bride is given to that family, and then again, alternatively, this could happen. Sometimes this could happen at the same time. So this is called sister exchange. So if let's say there are sets of cross cousins A and B and X and Y, they might get into sister exchange marriages, whereby these two boys give away their sisters to one another. Of course, the rules have to be followed there, the rules that I've mentioned. But in case of North India, the earlier slide, Gotra exogamy exists. So these are the rules because of which these different kinship terms are in vogue. Now, role of women in North India, of course, it's patriarchal system. So woman takes the back seat. Childbearing, household management becomes her primary job. Of course, I'm not talking about the modern families now, but we're talking about a system that has been existing for a very long time. In case of inheritance decision making, most of the things rest with men. Now again, don't go for exceptions there. We're studying, sociologically a system. In case of South India, matrilineal descent system is in existence. Control and control of the property. A lot of things are determined by women who have autonomy and at the same time some control, largely a lot of control over property as well. Women do not take their husbands' names after marriage. They retain their mother's family names and they reside in their mother's families only. But this is applicable only to those matrilineal families, matrilineal communities, not to patrilineal communities which exist in great abundance in South India throughout all the 5 states and union territories that you have there, right? Okay. Now, marriage and residence. Of course, we talked about patrilocal, endogamous marriage practices, etc., and joint family systems as well. Even in case of South India, there could be joint families also, but in case of matrilineal families, that used to be a rule more than an exception. Tharwads, as the Nayar families were known as, are breaking apart now. They don't exist the way they used to exist earlier. Extended family in North India, joint families existed, but those mostly were on the lines of patrilineage. Eldest male usually had the authority, which is called primogeniture. That is why, sabse bade bete Ram ko singhasan milega, etc., etc. That is how it really went. Paternal family ties are there with your chacha, tau, and their children. You gel more with them. You remember in the movie Animal how Ranveer Singh, goes to his uncles, chachas and taus, and their children, for bhaichara and to get support. And just an example, don't judge me by that example as well. Some people I know, consider that movie a very sexist movie, but it's only for an example. Brush it aside if you don't like it. Thanks. In South India, that's not how it really works. People who have often exchanged brides form a more, composite, more closer kin group, and which may consist of both your in-laws, your maternal side and paternal side both. So while your bua, while she is your bua, could also be your mommy. Your bua may be married to your mama, and hence she would be your mommy. Your mama, who is of course your mother's brother, is married to your bua, hence he is your pupa also. And because of that overlap, the same term is used. And for all you know, you might get married to your mama's daughter, and because of which he also becomes your father-in-law or sasur. And sasur does not have a different kinship term. Uh, it's the same word, mama or maman. Yeah, that's how simple it is. All right. So with that, inheritance, of course, moves on the patrilineal lines in North India, but in South India, depending on the um, um, in matrilineal societies, matrilineally, and in patrilineal societies through fathers. In North India, the religious practices, rituals, and everything, they have a huge focus on male descendants. In South India, even among even among patrilineal societies, I'm sorry, even among patrilineal societies, the there is this balance between both the kin groups. In North India, it's hypergamy, meaning girl usually is given away to a boy of a higher status, not of a higher caste, same caste, but of a higher socioeconomic status. In South India, usually the matches are of at the same level. That is why, I mean, it's again a joke, but something that I did notice a long time ago. दूल्हे के पिताजी का जो सेहरा होता है या जो भी है वो खड़ा उस तरह से रौब में रहेगा, लेकिन दुल्हन के पापा बिल्कुल देख के समझ में आ जाएंगे परेशान परेशान, because he is always catering to the needs and demands of, not needs, demands of the groom's side. But that doesn't happen in South India because they are usually at the same level. Again, there are exceptions and a lot of them. We are studying this system. That's why. Then, why did this really happen? What are the reasons for these variations? In North India, you see there was this large tracts of lands, and one had to. That was an economy that was primarily, breeding cattle and all. So the pastoralists that these North Indians were, they wanted to have association, have alliances over a long distance, over a large, area, so that they could easily have control over large tracts without any disturbance or without any fear of attack from any other enemy group. But in case of South India, it was an era of settled agriculture. And since those tracts were also not very long, very far-reaching, you see how Deccan Peninsula is, where you do, and of course the topography that has so many hills and all. So there is no plain like Indo-Gangetic plains here in North India. So there, those agrarian, families wanted to keep association, keep alliances close. They wanted to take increasing help from those close-knit groups. Hence, probably they entered into these kinds of cross-cousin marriages, keeping the close ones close, so that they could all pool in their resources whenever needed for agrarian activities and so on and so forth. But that doesn't really happen in North India. In South India, it does happen. You go, you can work even in your in-laws' place, your maternal side, your paternal side, and so on and so forth. And so do these folks come and work? That is how it used to happen earlier, but that doesn't happen anymore. Or there are so very fast the changes that are really occurring very fast in North India. Traditionally, this could never be imagined. Well, now moving on, of course, on the mother's side here, maternal uncles have a very important role even among patrilineal societies in South India. So mamas have a very important role there. Mamas, because mama is the one who is actually accepting a bride in his family. He becomes a father-in-law to that young girl. So maybe because of that, and many times girls were married off at a very young age. Of course, that's not done anymore. But the tradition has continued, because of which mamas are usually given a great amount of respect. Even if mama is not the one where the daughter is going, even sorry, niece is going, even then, mamas do have a very important, a special place in a girl's wedding. There is one more unique thing about, some South Indian communities do practice uncle niece marriage. Uncle niece marriage means mama and bhanji ki marriage. A man can marry his sister's daughter, provided his sister is elder and daughter is about the same age as he is. So this happened because earlier people had, several children, many children, and the youngest, if he happened to be a boy, and the eldest, if she happened to be a girl, the eldest daughter, if she had the eldest daughter or no elder daughter, she would be around the same age as this younger sibling of hers, whom she would have probably brought up as her own child, yeah, taking care of him before her child was born. And at the same time, she wants to reciprocate, that particular family wants to reciprocate the bride that has been given. But in this family, unfortunately, they do not have any cousin. So treating that younger sibling, younger brother, more or less like one's own nephew, that elder sister gives away her daughter there. That is uncle niece marriage. I know, in a live class I do hear a lot of, oh my God, and all those things. But this is not how we are supposed to respond. These are different cultures, and every culture has its own ways. We need to understand this. Only then we will have developed cultural sensitivity. Yeah, in a diverse country like India, we need a lot of cultural sensitivity, right? All right. So these are the factors, these are the reasons why um, in North India, different kinship system developed, why it works there, and why we have a different, kinship system in North India. These differences were really functional in a way. So that's a way you can look at it. What functions they performed, because the economic resources, the way social organization was, organized, was structured, it really helped in both these cases. And hence these two different kinship systems. I'm sure you must have enjoyed today's class as much as I have. I wanted to wind it up pretty, in time, so that it doesn't really stretch on. I may have been a little fast, but bear with me for the speed. And thank you for watching. Thank you.